Tom.
Yeah, good morning, Bill and Premier. I've had just a straightforward question. 5 months ago, you had one of your MLAs quit, and then in the 1st of January, another one. You have to call a by-election. You're on Bill's show now. Why not do it? I know it's coming soon because I think the timeline on the 6 months runs out on the 7th of March. But this is ridiculous that everybody's raring to go, and I know you may not want the results, but the fact is for 5 months there's been people in a Vancouver riding that have had no representation. If we'd have had it called in the first week of this year, in January, it would have been done by now. They could be waiting for the legal paperwork, and when the House sits tomorrow, they could be representing people of their riding in the House. And could you please just, why not today? You're on, everyone's listening. Why not just make the announcement?
Well, I will call a by-election in the riding and in both ridings very soon. So hold your breath. I'm not going to announce it here today.
Not today. Vaughn pointed out, last week that you have a number of former cabinet ministers sitting in caucus, probably second-guessing current cabinet ministers. Are you expecting several to step down and give you some new blood?
I think that there probably will be MLAs who choose not to run again. Some MLAs have served with distinction for 15 years, and some of them more than that. So I think it's possible that some will choose not to run again. And, we'll be sorry to lose them because they have a great experience and breadth of wisdom that they bring to it. But at the same time, as you say, it's great to have new blood. It's great to have people bringing in new ideas, a new fresh eye. I feel like I was able to do that. I came in after 5 years of being out listening to people for a living every single day, just like you do. And I came away far richer from the experience of having listened to people, hearing different perspectives every single day. And I think that's one of the things that happens when you bring new people into politics.
Do you worry any may jump to the Conservatives if they think that may help them get reelected?
I don't think there's anyone in our caucus who is interested in trying to elect the New Democrats. And we have to be, as a party and as people who care about the economy and jobs, sticking together. And we have to make sure that we do everything that we can to make sure we re-elect a majority government that cares about jobs and that's going to keep taxes low. That's my government.
You talked about a seniors agenda off the top in your opening statement, but you didn't go into any detail. Can you tell us what you have planned?
Well, I can't yet because we're going to be announcing it in the next couple of days. But
well, you can do it now.
It's going to be, I think, a pretty rich agenda for seniors because it's the fastest growing part of our population by far. Seniors are living much longer, which is great, and but need support, need different kinds of support in the system. So we have to rethink the way we support seniors, and we're going to be doing that with our seniors agenda. So you'll see that in the next couple of days. I don't want to let too much of the cat out of the bag and announce everything here today, Bill.
Back with more of your calls. Live with BC Premier Christy Clark. You're counting on your jobs plan, but shipbuilding and the bulk of the liquid natural gas jobs won't happen until after the next election. How do you get credit for future jobs?
Well, I don't know. You've just got to do the right thing. And so, the shipbuilding contract, for example, we worked hard as a government to try and make sure we brought that home for British Columbia. We worked hand in hand with C-SPAN to make it happen. And so, what was the alternative?
Wait a minute.
What was the alternative?
That went to fair and proper tender. The federal government got all kinds of credit for finally doing something right and not playing political favorites. They went and BC won the bid.
Yeah, BC won the bid because there was. It requires that there was government participation in all these bids. That's one of the boxes they need to tick. So we went through a really difficult process of trying to figure out what our participation was going to be on this. And what we did is we came up with apprenticeship training credits in the tens of millions of dollars to support this. Now, this is not taxpayers' money we're giving away. It is not a subsidy, and because we don't believe in subsidies for business, it was a difficult process for us to go through. If we hadn't been there to support this bid through apprenticeship tax training and tax credits, British Columbia might not have gotten it. And so it was essential that we were there. We worked really hard with C-SPAN to make sure it happened. And so we helped make it a great bid. And yes, the federal government did the right thing.
But those are jobs down the road. They're coming after the next election.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
You need something before the next election.
Just because it's not coming before the election doesn't mean I'm not going to try and do it. I mean, I want to make sure that British Columbians have those jobs. But I also, but in terms of liquefied natural gas, we're enabling an entirely new industry in British Columbia. Almost, I don't know how often any premier in the country gets to say, I'm enabling a new industry here. So in helping this industry establish, I think we're going to make a long-term generational difference. But in addition to that, I do think you'll start seeing dirt turned on it in 2012 because they're going to have to start building the pipeline. It's been through 21 months of process. And here's the thing, Bill. It is really important that in British Columbia, we start seeing progress, measurable progress on the jobs that we've been talking about. Because a project as big as this liquefied natural gas project is something that the world is watching. If we can get that underway quickly, the world's response, investors' response is going to be, holy cow, you can do business in British Columbia. And that's going to mean more investment and more jobs.
Where's the power going to come from for 3 liquid natural gas plants? That's a huge energy demand.
That's right. And it might be up to 5. But we'll certainly have one up by 2015 and then the next one. So we know that we can power the first 2. We've figured out how to do that with existing power sources. On future ones, though, we are going to have more power in British Columbia. Site C is coming online, and so are a whole host of renewables. We have to make sure we are building up the renewables business, the clean energy business in British Columbia. And one of your callers talked about that a little bit earlier. He said, we need to be advocates for renewables. I totally agree with that. What we're doing is we are creating a huge new demand for power, and that's going to mean we need to bring more power online.
Back to calls. Jane.
Hi, Bill. Morning, Premier Clark. My question is simple. It's about workplace bullying. While you were a talk show host on NW, you championed Pink Shirt Day and bullying causes. As a survivor of workplace bullying, my question is, when are you going to legislate workplace bullying, anti-workplace bullying, and why has it taken so long? It's an epidemic. It's tragic. I have just now come out of what I went through, and I'm looking forward to getting back into the workplace. So what is your government going to do about that?
And how concerned are you about it being in the public workplace, in government, as Mike Smith has been writing so much about?
Yeah, well, I am deeply concerned about bullying. This is one of the causes about which I'm most passionate, Bill, and I learned that here when I brought Pink Shirt Day to British Columbia from Nova Scotia, and I talked about it on the air with people. I was astonished. I was deeply moved by the stories that people tell about being bullied. It affects you for the rest of your life. It's one of those things that people find it incredibly difficult to get over. So
Can you legislate against it?
Well, there are lots of things that we can do to try and improve, to try and diminish rates of bullying. And, part of it is in the workplace. But really, you want to try and prevent it from happening. You want to prevent bullies from being created, which means you also need to really focus on the schools. So that, as I said in my opening comments, an comprehensive anti-bullying strategy is going to be part of the spring agenda for my government. I am absolutely passionate about it. We're going to make it part of this spring agenda, and we're going to make it part of next spring's agenda and the spring's agenda after that, because it's something we have to really keep on top of, because it can affect people for the rest of their lives.
Final segment of calls right after this. BC Premier Christy Clark, and we'll get back to your calls in just a moment. We talked earlier about BC Hydro and what you and Rich Coleman had come to think was a bloated Crown corporation. I'm told ICBC now has more than 50 people making in excess of $200,000 a year. Does that surprise you? Does it trouble you?
Yes, it troubles me. ICBC getting audited. We're going to be looking at ICBC in the same depth as we did at BC Hydro. And I think, Crown corporations have to live up to the same standard that the rest of government has been working hard to live up to. I mean, the rest of government isn't perfect, but the rest of government is doing, I think, a much better job than many of the Crown corporations are at trying to keep costs down. So, yeah, we're going to go in and look at them pretty closely.
604-280-9898. Will, good morning.
Good morning. Morning, Premier.
Morning.
A couple of quick questions. Did you hear the interview on CKNW recently with the TransLink bus driver who suggested there's as much as $20 million annually, or possibly as much as $40 million annually, in fare evasion, and that's just was directed strictly at buses? And where can anyone send proposals that could possibly save millions of taxpayers' dollars based on employee observations from here and around the world? Because the worst thing in the world is seeing tax dollars wasted, and then politicians saying that there's no room for improvements or pay raises.
You know what? I'm so glad Will asked that, because in terms of TransLink, or in terms of fare evasion, that's a TransLink issue. It's not something that the provincial government can necessarily change one way or another. We'll let them make that decision. But there's a huge number of other areas where government can find big efficiencies, and we need to take the advice of people who are on the front line. So, Will, please go on to the BC government website and tell us what your ideas are. We want to engage with people in a different way than government has in the past. We want to be really listening and taking people's advice where we can about how we can improve. I am absolutely focused on making sure we are growing the private sector economy and making government as efficient as we can. Families can't get ahead unless we keep our focus on that.
Drivers want help. They want better security on the buses, and they want that security to deal with fare evasion. I heard from many drivers last week, one of whom I think said he'd counted 145 fare evaders. But many were talking about 20 and 30 a night who were just not paying. 604-280-9898. We've got time for one or two more calls. Brian, good morning.
I voted Liberal, and I hope to do so in the next election. But Christy, one question: there's been a lot of talk over the years about cabinet ministers in all parties being more transparent with respect to their personal expenses. We know that if you work for a corporation in any job when you travel, you have to put an expense account in, and the company who is ever in charge views that. But that doesn't happen here in any of the parties, federally or provincially. Is there anything that you can do to make it to have that the expenses more open to the public?
We've already made a big start on that, and that's I'm glad he asked that, because he's right. We need to make sure that that's part of the transparency, and so you can go online and find my travel expenses anytime you want, and you can do that with other cabinet ministers as well. That's all made public, and my goal is to make it public in real time, so that we are, on an ongoing basis. You can just go on every day and you can go and see what the travel expenses
We've got a minute left. On the weekend, the phones were red hot over the revelation again that your government is paying about $1.5 million in perks for government employees, Starbucks gift cards or the like.
Well, we have about 30,000 employees in the province, and we spend about $750,000 overall on perks, on incentives to recognize great work, and that's a pretty widely recognized way to go about trying to incent employees.
So you defend it, you support it.
Well, I mean, the part of it that we're fixing is that there was no sign-off required. Now, this is a program that was set up in the 1990s under the NDP. There hasn't been in all those years any suggestion, I don't think, that it's been abused, but nonetheless, you need to have an additional sign-off. So we're fixing that part of the program. But boy, public servants, 30,000 public servants who dedicate their lives to supporting the needs of British Columbians, a little recognition sometimes is okay.
Thank you for doing this. I hope you'll do it again.
I will look forward to it, Bill. Thank you.
The news next.